Alrighty, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about SEEs. So last video we did was SLEs, so this is a good transition. Keep in mind the SEE has SE in the base position and FI in the creative position. So this is the MBTI equivalent of the ESFP. However, the systems do not translate over, so keep that in mind. An SEE and an ESFP are not the same thing, and so you are if you are one in one system, you are probably not the other in the opposing system. So keep that in mind. All right, let's get into it. So first thing to recognize with the SEE is their base position or base element, SE. So SE is looking to expand its influence in the environment. It's looking to create an effect on the environment. So what do I mean by this? Well, keep in mind that the difference between the two sensing elements, SI and SE, are the attitude they take to space. So what do I mean by space? This is really important to recognize. Typically with intuitive types, they're more internally directed. They're more directed into their ideas and their inner landscape. And so with a sensing type, they're going to be much more directed on the physical external world. So the difference between an SI type and an SE type is they take a whole different attitude to their environment. With a SI type, they're focused on the influence that several objects have on one another, and they want to ensure that there's a path of least resistance that they can take that doesn't cause too much friction or resistance in their environment. They're looking at doing things in the smoothest way possible, where things don't become too much of a challenge. So I want to point out here, this is a completely different orientation to what SC does. Whereas SC is looking to expand its influence on the environment, to push its will onto the external. So I want to give you an example of influence on the environment. So imagine that you have a group of people, and someone walks through the room, someone of importance. Maybe they're a coworker, maybe they're a boss, maybe they're just someone that's well known in the community, maybe they're famous. But when they walk through the room, they have a noticeable effect on the environment. Whether it be people get back to work and they start working and start doing what they're supposed to be doing, or maybe it's that they all turn and look at them like, oh my gosh, like so and so just got here, like, maybe they talk amongst themselves, but the point is when the person walks through the room, they have an impact on the environment. And that's what an SE type is wanting to do. Whereas an SI type is typically not wanting to have such a noticeable effect on the environment, not wanting to have such a pull or influence. Typically it's something they want to move in a smooth-like manner where they don't affect too many things in the environment. So that's why they call SI homeostasis and they call SE force, or what I call contending. Because with an SE type, it's competing for space. Whereas with an SI type, it's not competing for space at all. In fact, it's not wanting to infringe on the influence of others. And so that's why I said it's almost looking to reduce friction or reduce its impact. So for an SE type, they're wanting to extend their will, and anything that comes up as an opposition to their will or to their influence, they want to steamroll past it. And so I like to mess with SE types all the time by putting these little things in front of them, like, I don't know, I don't know if you can handle this, or I don't know, this seems like too much of an obstacle for you. Maybe this is too difficult. Maybe you should try something else. Whatever. Just different ways at poking at them is something I like to do. because oftentimes it just encourages them because they hear it and it's like they want to test their will against it. They want to see if they can overcome it. It's like, oh, an obstacle? Oh, a boundary? Like, I want to overcome that. So that's the attitude they take to those kinds of things. And it reminds me a lot of taking a surfboard. And when you get a surfboard, a lot of times what they'll do is they'll jump on the surfboard to test its strength, test its durability. Is it going to snap from me jumping on it? It should be able to withstand the pressure. So in the same way, I feel like that this is what SE types like to do. In a lot of different ways, whether it be themselves or whether it be an idea. With an SLE, you'll see that they want to test an idea or a set of principles to see if it can withstand their pressure. And so that's one way that SE types do this. But another way they do it is by testing themselves. They want to see if they can overcome their limits, if they can push past their boundaries. And this leads us to SI ignoring. SE bases, because they're so focused on extending their will into the environment or enforcing their will or expanding their influence, they don't pay a lot of attention to things like their bodies. SI has a lot of focus on their bodies and ensuring that they don't put too much pressure on themselves or on other things. So remember, like I said earlier, they don't want to create too much friction in the environment. This also applies to themselves. They don't want to be too hard on themselves. Whereas an SE base sees their body as something to overcome. You know, when their body's telling them they need to stop, an SE base just says, I want to push past anything that tries to stop me, including myself. And so SE bases a lot of times want to push past those limitations in any form, in any way. So that's their primary attitude to life. Now, obviously, it's going to be different between the SLE and the SEE because with the SEE, we're looking at FI creative. It's actually very different because the SEE has TI polar rather than any good TI. So FI is about polarity. FI is about attraction and repulsion, either to an object, an idea, a person. And so SEEs are going to know what they want. They're going to know what they like. It's going to be pretty clear to them. And their focus is going to be oftentimes on creating and establishing bonds with others. Now remember, they have four-dimensional extroverted feeling. So something I've noticed with types that have four-dimensional extroverted feeling, at least in the demonstrated position. So the IEs and the SEEs have FI creative and FE demonstrative. And what I've noticed with these types is that they take any information or any how do I put this? So for example, a lot of FE valuing types will do a lot of banter and they'll throw out things that are meaningless and don't actually have to do with the person or how they feel towards the person. And keep in mind that FE is emotions and it's not focused on one's disposition to another or how they feel about a specific object or thing. It's just emotional affect. Okay? So with FE types, they like to say a lot of things that they don't mean or say a lot of things that are just intended to be jokes. And what's funny is I've been in a lot of situations with types that have FI creative and FE demonstrative. And something I've noticed is that anytime I make these jokes, they take it in like a big funnel and they turn it directly into FI. They're like, oh, you made this joke? And then they're like, that's how you feel about me, right? Or anything like that. It's like any expression that's put out into the environment is turned into a example of how that person feels to someone or to them. And so this was something that in one of my jobs, I would always make jokes, and someone would always make it about how I felt about them. And I think they knew deep down that I didn't actually think that about them, um, but that's something that I've seen with them a lot. So you may notice that with the FI creative types, they're going to be taking in all of that FE information, all of those that witty banter, and turning it right into relations, or how do I feel about this person, or how does that person feel about me, or how does that person feel about others in the environment. And so yeah, that's going to be something that you're going to see with those types. um, Also, that FE demonstrative is going to go a long way in terms of how expressive someone is. Obviously, they're not looking to create an impact on the environment in the same way that an EIE would be. Um, the Typically with an FE base, they're looking to create that emotional affect in the environment. And SEE is not looking to do this per se, but they will do it passively. Um, for them, it's more so oriented towards relations. And so they may use FE demonstrative uh, to figure out who it is they do and they don't like in the environment. So another thing to note with SEEs is they're going to likely, with that FE demonstrative and that FI creative, they're likely to do or say or make someone feel or express in a way that's going to benefit that relationship, right? So, for example, let's say they want to be friends with somebody. They'll likely express themselves the way they feel they need to in order to create that relation. So that's one thing that you're likely to see with that as well, is they may very well shape themselves to the person they're interested in or to the person they want to establish a bond or connection with. So with one group of people, they may look very different from another group of people. And this is just how an SEE establishes their bonds. So, alrighty, let's get into TE. So before we talk about TE directly, I want to talk a little bit about FI and TE as a dynamic. So typically when you see FI and TE, or uh, so FI creative, TE mobilizing, or um, TE creative, FI mobilizing, you'll see this transactional sense of relationships. In fact, you'll probably also see it with a TE base as well. And I would say maybe a little bit more so, yeah, TE base as well. Probably not so much for the EII or the ESI. Um, But that sense of a transactional relationship is something that's going to be significant with these types, like ILI and SE in this case. Because, um, so for example, for myself, I don't really think a lot about how much I'm giving to someone and how much they're giving to me. It's not something that really crosses my mind. Obviously, I'm TE polar, so that plays a role. Um, And if something starts to wear me out, I'll do something about it. But what I've noticed with these types is they do pay specific attention to who they choose to have in a relationship or as a friendship based off how much that person is investing in them as well. So that's something that they'll pay a lot of attention to, and they'll probably be measuring closely. So that's something you'll see with an SCE as well. Like, why would I be friends with this person when they don't seem to care that much about me? Obviously, remember the SCE has the FE demonstrative, so it is possible that if they want to create that kind of attraction, they'll know how they need to act or how they need to express themselves in order to capture that person's interest. And then maybe they won't have to worry so much about uh, about that person not feeding them the attention they're wanting, because they may just attract that person's attention in the way needed. So that's the little comment I wanted to make about FI and TE. Moving on to TE mobilizing. So one thing to keep in mind with the mobilizing is it's missing its opposite orientation. So in this case, we have TE mobilizing, so it is missing TI. With the SEE, you're going to see someone who prides themselves in their ability to do things efficiently and practically, to find practical solutions in a lot of different cases. And what I've noticed with with the SEEs is that their strength in TE is more so in practicality and less so in efficiency. I think every time you take the mobilizing element, there's a little bit of it that's when it's stronger, like when it's in the creative or base position, it's often used for, at least for TE, it's often used about in terms of efficiency, in terms of reducing waste. And this is something you're going to see as well with the SEE, but more to a lesser degree and a lot more focus on practicality. I've seen IEEs and SEEs are extremely practical in a lot of ways, and they find a lot of practical solutions for a lot of things. So, but you're going to see SEEs pride themselves on how much they're spending their money and whether or not it's going to anything positive or beneficial, but it's also not something that they're particularly good at. Obviously, each type can develop their mobilizing and it can get good to an extent, but it'll never be natural to them. It will be something that, given enough attention, will wear them out. So, the one thing I want to note there before I move on to TI polar, this can actually cause a bit of a sharp point for the SEE. You know, with four-dimensional extroverted feeling, they can be very expressive, but I think that when an SEE moves to their mobilizing TE, you're going to see someone whose tone changes, most likely to a much more practically oriented type. Because remember, TE and FE are opposites, so they can't function at the same time. So it's likely you'll see someone who was once very expressive become very straightforward about something being inefficient or not making sense in a practical manner. So for TI polar, this type's not going to be very good structuring their thoughts or ideas. In fact, this actually feeds back to our understanding of FI and FE. The IEE and the SEE know themselves in a much different way than the TI types. So what do I mean by this? Something you'll notice when you take a LII, a SLE, LSI, etc., these strong TI types, something you'll notice with them is that they have a series of principles in which they go about making their decisions. And I've noticed that this is almost the way that they think of themselves. In a way, it's like, well, this is what I stand for, and they work on how to essentially improve this protocol so that they know how to make better decisions in a sense. So a lot of times, this is how they think of themselves. This is how they think of their identity in a way. It's akin to, you know, a business and its the way it organizes itself. You can think of high dimensional TI types as doing something similar, in that they recognize that they will conduct themselves in different manners depending on the situation. So they have this set of principles that's almost a guideline for them to live by. And so you could say this is their identity and that it's what's driving them. It's what's driving the wheel. Obviously, they will run into situations that will challenge that, and they'll have to work on it and improve it and account for things that they may not have seen before. However, with SEE and with IEE, you're going to see two types that don't have much of a sense of this structured approach. So the way they're going to know themselves is a lot less in a building principle sense and more so in a this is how this thing makes me feel. Um, it's obviously we have four-dimensional FE and we have more importantly in this case three-dimensional FI. So with these types, it's going to be much more about whether or not something attracts them or repulses them. So remember, FI is about polarity. It's about attraction or repulsion to people, objects, ideas. And so, and SE is going to likely know themselves or the things they like based off how those things make them feel. And so a lot of times they may feel different about it from day to day. And so they may say one thing one day about how much they hate something, and the other day they may say the opposite. And I actually have an SE friend that this happens with all the time. I'll be like, she'll say, "Oh, well, I hate that," and I'll be like, "Well, yesterday you said you hated this, so which one is it? Because it's contradictory." And she'll usually just like get upset or change the subject or something. But um, that's something that you're going to see with SEs. They're not going to have that principle structure of what things they like and dislike because it's not something they figured out. It's more so that something that they experience is something that repulses them or attracts them. And so that may change from moment to moment quite often. But generally, I don't want to say quite often as though it happens all the time, but it does. It will happen, and I think that it's a very interesting thing. It's a very interesting thing to me, at least, to see these types that know that something feels good by how it makes them feel. It's very much focused on that. It's not focused on, it's not like they figured it out. It's not like they know what it is about that thing that they like or anything like that. It, well, that's not probably the way to put it, but um, with a TI type, you're going to see someone who understands why they approve of something, or why they think it should be done a certain way, or why they stand for that thing. With an SEE, they may make an argument one day, and then another day they may feel a different way. So that's something you're going to see with that type. The way that they know that they're drawn to something or like something is more so based off their personal sentiment towards it. Because remember, FI is about someone's fixed sentiments towards a person, object, idea. Whereas the TI types with no FI are likely going to not like something because they like it. It's typically not going to be about them. It's going to be about what makes sense because they have TE demonstrative and TI creative. So that's going to be the primary difference. Had a little bit of a hard time explaining that, but we got there. Alrighty, let's see. Next thing, anti-suggestive. So, I've said before, I believe, that SE types are typically materialist. What do I mean by this? Well, it's not that they choose to be materialist per se, it's that they already are materialist. I think there are some people out there who may choose to be materialist for a practical end, but with SE types, they're already very involved in their environment. They don't have this sense of an inner world. So so with a SE type, they're typically looking for something beyond the physical. It's not something they know very well. It's not something they have a lot of confidence in. But an SE type's already materialist, but they want something more. They want something beyond that, something greater. And so you're gonna see them want that in their lives, but not know what it is or how it works. Um, so that's the first thing. You know, that they're gonna be like, I know there's something bigger than this. I know there's something more important, something greater than all of this, but I don't know what it is. And that's the attitude you're going to see them take. They're missing that introverted intuition. They're looking for that introverted intuition. Um, Another thing about SEEs, and I said this with the SLEs as well, the SEEs are not going to have a sense of how things are going to unfold. They're not going to know how things are going to happen. It's typically, I know it because I've tried it. And that's the same attitude you're going to see with an SEE. SEs are going to know something because they've done it in the past, obviously. Uh, you know, maybe I shouldn't do this time because I did it last time and it didn't work, right? And so in the same way, uh, this is something you're going to see with SE as well. There's not going to be a lot of confidence in saying, well, this is how things are going to happen, or this is what I think, how I think things are going to turn out. They're not going to have a lot of sense of how things are going to happen, so they typically revert back to their base element and they push to make the thing that they want to happen happen. So that's another big aspect of the SCE's one-dimensional NI. They're going to be wanting that from somebody. They want someone to tell them the purpose and the meaning of life. They want them to give them direction, a vision, something to aim for, something to strive for. The problem that you'll see with SE bases is they put all their energy into their external environment. They put all their energy into their work or whatever they're doing. And then they push and push and push and push. And then they're like, what am I pushing for? What is it that I'm trying to achieve here? Like, where am I going? Like, what is all this for? Is this even meaningful? And so they can be prideful in their ability to push past obstacles. But then it's like, but why? Why am I pushing past these obstacles? What am I searching for? And what is this accomplishing? What's the bigger meaning here? And so SE types can often feel like there's something, like they're lacking meaning, or they don't know why they're doing something. Like what's the purpose? Why even continue? Why is this important? And that's why they need an NI base to tell them or remind them that this is why you're doing this. This is why things are important, because the NI base is seeing um, uh, what that's going to accomplish. They're seeing the long-term vision. They're seeing what's going to happen in the future. And I'm going to say, obviously, they're not going to know what's happening in the future. It's just a projection, but they have a lot more confidence in that. And another thing that I was thinking about was that a lot of times, um, for an NI base, something that I pay a lot of attention to is why certain things exist. You know, like, why do these feelings exist? Why do people get upset about certain things? And what I find is that, and this is just an input from II here, but what I find is that people are typically dissatisfied with certain things um, because they've been negatively affected by it or something of the sort. So what I understand these negative feelings to be is almost nature's way of ensuring change, right? We feel this so strongly about something because it encourages us to push past it or to change it or fix it. And so um, because you can see there that what I'm doing is bringing a meaning to these feelings of dissatisfaction with the way things are. And I'm saying, no, 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 this is what you're meant to do. This is your destiny here, is to act on these feelings, to fix this problem. And so in a lot of ways, this can be really impactful for an SC base, knowing that there's a bigger force that's putting those things into motion, and it's something that they can be confident is the thing they need to do. You can think of all those movies where you have that very capable young man or hero of the story, and then he comes across some old lad or some old wise sage who tells him, this is your destiny, this is what you're meant to do, and they set out on a journey to go accomplish those things. This is the SE type who wants to know that what they're doing is important, who wants to know that this is why they're here, that this is why they're doing this. So um, that's what the SE types crave, is that purpose and meaning behind what they're doing. So yeah, so that's I didn't mean to get too much into introverted intuition there, but I think it's a little bit important to see what they're craving. So anyways, extrovert intuition. So you're going to see extrovert intuition in the role position. So it's going to be two-dimensional. And oftentimes with the role element, you're going to have to push past the role element to access the suggestive. So for example, I'm an IEI. Naturally, I'm more of I use SI a little bit easier than I do SE. I've had to learn to develop and focus on extroverted sensation, or the attitude of enforcing my will rather than reducing it. So that's something that you'll see oftentimes with a the role element, and this is also the case with the SE types. So another thing to keep in mind is that NE is another word for options, possibilities, perspectives, ideas. Basically, it's abstract thought moving in a divergent manner. So what do I mean by this? Well, when you're having a conversation with someone, and if I say something to you that can be interpreted 5 different ways, maybe initially you only hear it one way, right? And so you think that I'm saying one thing. With an SE type, they're going to be taking in that information as it is for the most part. So I know that for myself, I've gotten to a lot of conversations where I'm hearing someone say something and I'm thinking, and they think they're being specific, but I'm thinking, well, it could be this, it could be that, it could be that, it could be that. Like they could be meaning so many things. And sometimes, that can be actually frustrating, because I can read a book, or I can read some piece of it like philosophy or something. And it's like I can't figure out what they're trying to say because I'm recognizing how many things they could be saying. So with an SE type, it's not going to be so much this way. They're going to take the information as it is. However, they have that role NE that can come in for just a moment and say, well, maybe they mean this, or it could be this, or I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it's this instead, right? They're going to have to, obviously NE is the opposite of SE. So they're going to have to shut off their base for just a moment so that they can access their role element. So that's something you're going to see with SE types. They can survey options, but what you'll see with ESI or with LSI is they're more likely to be assumptive. They're more likely to just say, well, this is what you're saying, or like, this is what it is. Rather than surveying what could be possible alternatives. I've gotten to a lot of conversations with an LSI, for example, that I was talking with, and they just assumed that I meant something, and I'm like, hold on, you're arguing with me on something that I didn't even say, because they take the information at face value. And like I said in the last video, LSIs would often say, well, you should have been more precise, right? They want that precision. So again, SE types, surveying options, they can consider the alternatives or possibilities, but knowing which one is has the most purpose or meaning, or what's the most likely outcome, is going to be something they have a harder time doing. They know what things could happen, they know what the potentials are maybe, and they can't explore that too much. It's something that they can do a little bit. They know what they want to happen, and they know what the possible alternatives are, and they're able to survey their options, but it's not something that they can do for very long. It's something that dies out quickly. So, alrighty. I think we covered SE, FI, FE, SI, ignoring the body, overcoming limitation. They're also not going to care. One thing I want to say about that as well. My SLE roommate has been decorating the apartment lately, and he's like wanting everything to have an impact. He wants people to walk in and he wants them to feel the impact, or like, you know, like see all these like war paintings or something and be like he wants it to like hit them and like essentially this is who I am. It's in your face. You know what I mean? And I've seen with SI types, they're often trying to reduce things having too much impact because they don't want it to become a distraction in the environment. So with SE, you're also going to see it in ways that they're not paying a lot of attention to reducing or creating a harmonizing environment. So yeah, that's one more thing I wanted to say about that. We have TI, TE, NI, NE. I think we covered everything. So I hope you guys liked that video. I'm actually going to put the Discord link down below. So you should join our community. We have a lot of fun on there. We talk about a lot of different stuff. We talk about socionics, talk about Enneagram, spirituality, all kinds of stuff. So you should join. If you don't know a lot about socionics, we can talk about that as well. So we can help you learn. We also have several events, listen to music, all kinds of stuff, play games. So yeah, you should check that out. Definitely worth taking a look. And also I am now doing typing sessions. So I'm going to put down the link below. You can schedule a typing session with me. So yeah, don't forget to give this video a like, subscribe, and if you're new to Socionics, you should check out my Introduction to Socionics playlist on the channel. So perfect. Thank you guys so much for coming. See you guys next time. Peace.